for sake of conversation, what part does part of you consider that this could be like any number of variations, like that they faked this to trick a foreign entity, like the moon race kind of an argument, or like that this was fake entirely to manipulate the American people into a certain direction, or even, you know what I mean? Like all those overlaps, or like the Project Bluebeam kind of conversation, any of those things, like you consider those as well?
So when I first started researching this topic, because I have a show where I cover just news and politics like everybody else. So this was not something that I normally cover on my show. And when David Grusch came out, and this wasn't the first time I heard these allegations, but it was the first time somebody's talking about Inspector General's investigations and open congressional investigations and possibly an FBI investigation. Okay, so all this means there's documents somewhere. There's a paper trail of what's going on here. So that made me look into this more. Mm-hmm. And I was very hesitant to even cover this on my time. It was a while of like sleepless nights doing research on this, because I didn't want to cover this topic if it was bullshit. I didn't want to be giving my audience misdirection or disinformation or whatever, some psyop distraction, whatever. And especially since that was the dominant narrative among independent media, that's exactly what this is. So this whole time I've been doing this research for almost 2 years now, almost 2 years, exactly, because it's been, David Grusch came out in June 2023. So the whole time I've been doing this, in the back of my mind, anytime I find something, especially earlier on, it was like, okay, is this bullshit? Is this like fake? And the more I entertain that, the more I notice it's just conjecture from people assuming that this is all a setup. Nobody can show me the emails or the text messages or the conversations or anybody coming out and saying, hey, this is an active psyop. We're going to trick everybody into believing UFOs. And like nobody other than the Project Bluebeam from decades ago, nobody, all of this UFO research has been going on continuously, and nobody could find any other information to provide this as a psyop. And I haven't found it myself. Now, that doesn't mean they won't manipulate the situation like they do for literally everything else. They will spin anything for their own advantage. And they do that with this topic too. But I feel like people have taken the fact that you know that they're going to put spin on it and just lump the entire topic into a psyop, which I think is a disservice.
That's a problem with media today in general. Like the point is we should consider that it could be, and also very well consider what you're pointing out. Like what I think is important is that regardless of whether or not it's being used or manufactured or whatever else, that you're still showing things that can be verified, documents from the government, right? The videos of them doing so. Like, so it's clearly something to report on, right? So it's, people should consider for themselves what that might mean. Like, so it's the idea that somebody could invalidate what you're doing because it's a psyop. They're, I think, missing the larger point that clearly your reporting is simply showing that this is what's going on, not that we can definitively argue one way or the other. And I agree with that. I think today in the field, it gets, people, there's a lot of willful or rather false certainty that I think is a really a big problem there. But, it's interesting. And I asked that because I think it's important that, the one of the considerations be that maybe these things were one way or the other, either put out in the world in order to drive us a certain direction, or like you said, maybe that they were put out and then buried because something real was there. Those are both very real possibilities. But
actually, you brought it up. I want to bring up, because I've read the series that your contributor Matthew Arrett has been posting. So I get the narrative that this is all manufactured by the government and it's all a psyop or whatever. And I honestly, I think that it requires so many leaps in logic and so many jumping to conclusion so many times that I don't see that as a viable option here anymore. For decades, they've and again, so back in the 40s, they had flying saucers that were working like nothing we even have today in 2025. So you can't point to me any piece of classified technology where there was this level of secrecy. Even nuclear weapons, they teach nuclear science in college. They're not gonna show you how to make a nuclear bomb, but nobody's denying the existence of nuclear technology.
At the same time, if it wasn't for a robbery, we probably wouldn't know about COINTELPRO until like now, unless they declassified it.
Those are classified programs, right? Those are operations. Those are different from technology.
I guess my whole point to all of this is it's like a couple of degrees of compartmentalization away from everyone doing a job that they have full faith and confidence that is the job they're supposed to be doing, researching the thing that they're supposed to be researching on and reporting on it in the most studious, judicious, and rigorous scientific fashion. That doesn't mean it's happening. It just means that, it's only a couple of degrees of compartmentalization away from literally 99.999% of people involved doing the actual legitimate functions of the job that they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and that's how the program has been described by people who claim they're familiar with it. That it's, especially people like Eric Davis, that it's overly compartmentalized. Scientists don't even know what somebody across the hall is working on, and they can't add it to their own research. So it's an actual issue with the way that the program works, allegedly.
Yeah.
And so as far as, could it be so overly classified that it could possibly be
It doesn't have to be overly classified. There just has to be a degree or two of compartmentalization, in a tiny little bit of extra additional research that takes place without the rest of the participating scientists, engineers, etc., being aware of it.
Yeah, and another thing that I would add that really blows out the idea that this is just advanced technology is the amount of high-level government scientists, especially in NASA, but also in the Air Force, who could spend a considerable amount of time compiling data on UFO incident and UFO research and like actual technical analysis. I came across in one of the leaked documents from the OSAP program, which Eric Davis was a part of. Recently, a couple of days ago, there've been actually over the last couple of weeks, there've been hundreds of pages from the defense contractor side of it, the corporate documents that have been leaked. And one of them, they mentioned the research of Paul Hill, which is he was a key figure in NASA. He was there before NASA was called NACA or something like that. And he was there throughout the creation of NASA, and he worked there. I want to say he died in the 70s. And he wrote a whole book. You can look it up. It's on my Twitter feed. I posted the cover page in like a couple pages of it. I think it's called Unconventional Flying Objects or something like that. And it's a whole scientific analysis, again, from somebody whose job it is to study space and space technology and space transportation, very seriously following these UFO reports and collecting the data on them from people in NASA, from people in the military, from civilian pilots over decades. So the idea that there's such a classified program and our government has this technology and it's so classified that even our top scientists are trying to figure out what's going on, like Edward Teller, like James Tuck, and like Paul Hill that I'm talking about, for decades. It's unbelievable to me. And then also,
I wouldn't say that though. I think that's very possible, but I agree. I get what you're saying. I think that the major thing here is that I think both can exist. Like I think that like I'm of the mind that like leaning towards what you're saying, that there's plenty of logic out there to rationalize why there's the possibility of something else outside of this planet. But at the same time, even like let's even say, for the sake of argument, that we know that's the case. I could make 40 valid arguments for why the government would still pretend, would still fake, or give you this false impression of something to keep you away from what they're high. All just hypothetical though. So it's like I think that's why it's just important to keep that possibility open, but engage with facts, because the facts are clearly leading in a very obvious direction. The investigation's interesting, but the the idea that they could effectively create something like that. I think there's actually provable examples of something like that in history from the U.S. government, but not that we should assume that, though, right? Just as one of the possibilities.
And actually, you mentioned something, and it reminded me of this. So it's funny. The narrative coming from the official narrative coming from the leadership of the Department of Defense is to maintain the cover-up. It hasn't changed at all, which is it's why I'm been so confused why there's this consensus that the Department of Defense is trying to convince everybody that UFOs are real, when if you listen to the leadership and the president, they keep telling everybody, yeah, there's nothing to see here. So there's like I talk about it, there's factions in the Department of Defense. Some people want to release this information for their own reasons. I'm not saying that they're altruistic angels and they're doing it for the good of humanity. Some people want to make some money off this, and there are people actually literally making money off this patented technology. Somebody who's working with the person who was in charge of her name is Anna Brady Estevez. She was in charge of the space portfolio and the energy technology portfolio at the National Science Foundation. So $1 billion portfolios she's in charge of for research. She's funding somebody who says he was working on a reverse engineering program, and he's patented technology funded by the NSF and DARPA to make this interplanetary spacecraft that doesn't have any fuel or combustion fuel or anything like that. So there's some people who want to get this out, and like I said, it's not because they're doing it for the good of humanity. People want to make money off of this, and there's some people who want to maintain the cover up because they know how bad it's going to look if the Department of Defense comes out and says, "Yeah, we actually been lying about this for 80 years." So it's not a consistent narrative. But the reason why I bring this up is so the Department of Defense, the official line is, all these whistleblowers are lying. They're all conspiracy theorists. They've been going on a tirade for like 2 years, smearing whistleblowers and trying to discredit them. And just 2 days ago, the Department of Defense, working with the Wall Street Journal, put out this, honestly, the dumbest article I've ever seen. And it's, again, trying to perpetuate this idea that everybody's just mistaken. And we're just talking about classified programs here, and there are no UFOs. So basically, the gist of the article is the office that the Congress has set up to investigate UFOs is called AARO, the All Domain Anomalous Research Office, or something like that. So they had 2 jobs from Congress: to compile UFO incidents at military bases and investigate them, and then to do what's called a historical review about these allegations that there's a crash retrieval program in the Department of Defense. They put out the review last year. It was full of inaccuracies, full of bullshit. There were no sources cited, a bunch of claims, and saying, "Oh, yeah, we looked. There's nothing to see here." One of the articles that I wrote like a 6,000 word article about Eric Davis, and this him and multiple people who were part of this offset program keep saying that and again, this is backed by Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Harry Reid, the chair of the Budget Committee and the chair of Homeland Security. They were backing this program, and people from this program, like Eric Davis, have come out and said that they were supposed to receive UFO technology, piece of crash UFO technology from Lockheed Martin, and they were working with the vice president, the person who was in charge of Skunk Works, who was a friend of Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis. And they worked together on other projects. They were supposed to coordinate a transfer, and then the director for the science and technology director of the CIA stepped in, intervened, and said this isn't going to happen, and he shut the whole thing down. That's been a story. I did research into it, found multiple documents that support that version of events. So AARO puts out their report. They say all these stories about crash retrievals and reverse engineering programs, they're all fake, and these whistleblowers mistaken classified programs and all that stuff. And again, citing no sources, but to show you how the ridiculous nature of their so-called review. By the way, everybody who testified to them said that they didn't follow up with anybody. Eric Davis said they gave them the names of people and the phone numbers and email addresses, and they didn't contact any of them. But what they did do was they asked the director of the science and technology director. They were like, "Hey, we were hearing that you shut down this transfer of UFO technology. Do you know anything about that?" They say, "Oh, he wrote us a letter and he denied the whole thing. Never made the letter public." That was just all they put in their historical review. Just, it's comical. So now 2 days later, the Department of Defense, they're working on the part 2 of this historical review, right? And they're working with the Wall Street Journal, and they put out this, I don't know what to call this, propaganda piece. They basically say, yeah, so everything we said in that other review, that wasn't true. We lied. Here's a whole new set of facts about these crash retrieval programs. And it turns out, this is literally in the article, they say it was a hazing ritual. So people who are in these classified programs, people were just trolling them, and they were showing them pictures of fake UFOs and giving them fake briefings about UFOs, and they were just doing this as like a hazing, part of the classified programs. And listen, this is a hilarious part of the article. They say hundreds and hundreds of people in the Air Force signed NDAs about fake UFO programs, fake NDAs about fake UFO programs. So again, they didn't put any of that in the article. They didn't link not one of the NDAs or any of these hundreds and hundreds of people who are allegedly been hazed into these fake UFO programs. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is the narrative from the Department of Defense is there's nothing to see here. This is all classified technology. Everybody's just misunderstanding classified technology. They won't provide any sources for that, and all of the evidence is on the other side, showing that they're lying. So it was a long tangent, but there's just too, for me, I don't want to say I'm not entertaining the idea that this is a psyop, but the overwhelming majority of the evidence is on the side that there's something real here. There are too many coincidences and connections that I've done over 2 years. I've written multiple articles about this. There's just too many connections for this to all possibly be a psyop. Name me one other psyop that was this efficient. Yeah. Did anybody believe Russiagate this much? Or was it this believable? Or was it this solid, the foundation of Russiagate? No, it wasn't. Or we gotta invade Syria because Bashar al-Assad, he's gonna gas his people and all this. Was that a convincing psyop based on all of this decades-long research? Or like all these other things? And again, they have those psyops. They have a clear motive. And there's always, you can see clear as day why they're telling the story that they're telling. Nobody can tell me why there's so much effort going on behind this UFO topic, and everybody's saying it's a psyop, but to what ends? Yeah, so,
but I think I'm sure you would acknowledge that not knowing that doesn't therefore prove it's not. Now you're not saying that, but
there's not even a coherent argument. Is the point I'm making?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I think the point I'm making is that it could be both of those things, and just to consider that, like that you're right, and that they're using the psyop around it for whatever their objective is. I wanted to ask you about the Tom DeLonge thing, and again, I haven't researched this to super extent, except when it was kind of like a hot topic. But where do you place that in all this? That weird, what was it called, Steve? That fucking
To the Stars Academy.
Yeah, like how do you fit that in with all this? Yeah. It's a weird development.
So, I that part I really haven't followed too closely, but I understand people's criticism of To the Stars Academy
because it was like government backed, right? It was
and the people involved. But here's the thing, and this is like the surface level criticism that people make, and it's like they believe it's the end of the argument that there's a bunch of spooks and there's a bunch of intel people involved in this. Well, guess what? This is would be the highest classified program. It's not going to be the mailman or your local lunch lady or mechanic who's going to be who has access to this information. It's going to be the most unsavory people. It's going to be the people with the most sketchy backgrounds and intelligence and in military. That's just who's involved in these programs. So I don't know where else we're expected to get this information from, but I don't dismiss everything coming from these sources just because of the background.
We shouldn't. That's ignorant. Like consider all of it. Like question all of it as we're doing, right? But I that drives me crazy. Where it's that, like you're saying, is people just reflexively go, because they're there, therefore this is X, Y, and Z, and that's just false certainty. It's like we need to question all these and flesh it out, because like I think historically, like I'm saying with this point, is you can find these weird anomalous situations where the way they handle it, the way that they lie about it, doesn't seem to make sense at the surface level. You know what I mean? Like, but till you find out 10 years later, oh, okay, like here's how these pieces all come together. It's like, I think, where this goes, it's like back to that video you're showing. Like, it's interesting to me that you can show a video of the people, like, again, not knowing for sure if it's alien tech or they made it up or something they made, all the arguments are made, but that they have that tech at that point, at least based on the documentary, and then wondering why that's not being used in our lives. It's like, it's interesting, like how you dismiss something like that without giving it due diligence is just, it's frustrating, because I find that fascinating, and I think there's something to it,
Yeah, and about that, not giving it due diligence is, like I said, so Arrow is supposed to be doing this historical review about crash retrieval and reverse engineering. How are you doing a review about in the Department of Defense and you completely miss the project where they were literally making a flying saucer?
Right.
So nothing about this smells right. And just a few more points I want to end on the article, because there's even more connections that are hard to dismiss to